Hello, hello, hello. Good evening, everybody. We are here and we are going to talk about growing food. Now, everybody who knows me and everybody who watches me knows I love me some good food, whether I make it, somebody else makes it. But over the past year or so, I've gotten really into growing my own food. But as you can see, I am the non-gardenista. I do not proclaim to be an expert at this. I just happen to do great some days. And, some days, we just don't talk about those days. But I wanted to come on and talk about this because with so many things happening with our food being over processed, guys, we'll never get away from processed food. So please get rid of that dream. But things
Mhm.
get over processed. And, sometimes you want to be able to know where your greens are coming from, where your herbs are coming from, and then just have that ability to relax and grow your food, right? Because those of you who are gardeners, a lot of you got into it because it's relaxing. Well, I wanted to teach you about aeroponic gardening. Now, because I'm the non-gardenista, I can tell you some tricks and stuff, but I'm gonna teach you. No, I'm gonna show you somebody who's actually been killing it with the growing of her own food and helping other people in the area and other companies and just helping people grow new food and learn about growing food. Because I had a conversation with somebody recently that I know would resonate with her was the fact that kids don't know where food comes from. They really don't know. They think it comes from a bag and a magical truck that pulls up twice a week to the supermarket. So it's been fun watching the kids grow their own food. But I want to introduce you to SeTara DeThrow, and I hope I'm saying that right.
Yes, you are.
Awesome. Now, she is somebody who has been killing it with the educating of people when it comes to growing aeroponically. She has been on the stage in front of thousands of people. She is an educator, which she's about to educate you guys here right now. And I've actually learned from her about different tricks and tips to do when it comes to setting up my garden and doing different things. So I wanted to bring her on so she can kind of like go through her story of why she got started first, with her health and wellness journey and how she's at this pit stop of gardening. So I'm just going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Miss Tisha, the non-gardenista. Thank you so much. Guys, let me just tell you something. Becoming an aeroponic gardenista was not something I thought I was going to do. I'm not a stranger to gardening at all. My granny, my grandfather, they were all traditional gardeners. I did the dirt thing, growing food in the dirt, all that stuff. As I got older, that's not so much. I don't like it so much. I don't like the bugs and things like that. So it was just natural for me when I saw the aeroponic system, which you can see mine in the background. I want to tell you a little bit about it. It was just a natural thing for me to say yes. I want to know more about it. But Tisha also said something about the fact that I'm an educator. So guys, yes, I'm an educator of 27 years, straight out of college. Started becoming an educator, and what I learned is that many children don't have many lived experiences when it comes to things like gardening or growing their own food. And that's for many different reasons. Won't dive into all of those. I'll be talking forever. And I promised Tisha I wouldn't talk forever. But what I learned is, like she said, is some children think that their food comes out of a can. They think that, like you said, you just go in the grocery store, you buy it, and there it is. So when I saw the aeroponic system, I was like, first of all, I need to know if I can actually grow this because that's the educator in me. Can I grow it? How fast does it grow? Does it taste good? Is it easy? Because being an educator, when I talk to people about this, I want them to see how easy it is. I want them to see that you don't have to have a green thumb. So I know Tisha says she's not an aeroponic gardenista or a gardener. You don't have to have a green thumb. What I like to call it is plug and play because you plug it up and it does its thing. If you have children, the children get to watch it grow, they get to do different activities with it. So for me, it was a no brainer. And I actually started growing amidst the pandemic. A lot of people don't want to talk about that, but it was a lifesaver for my family. Honestly, not having to worry about are we going to have fresh leafy greens in our house. If we didn't have anything else, we had fresh leafy greens. We had arugula, kale, basil, spinach, three different kinds of lettuces, kale, rainbow chard, and it was fresh. It was like super fresh. We pick it, we eat it. So you grow it, you pick it, you eat it, you share it, right? So for me, like I said, it was a no brainer, guys. Many people was like, I don't see the benefits of having it. Um, really? I mean, we all should be growing our own food in some way because if it's not the pandemic, it's going to be the next thing, right? So for me, Tisha, it just made sense for me to start growing my own food. I call it project based learning. And for my educators who may tune in either on Tisha's timeline or my timeline, don't act like y'all don't know what that is. It's food innovation, it's food technology, it's STEM, science, technology. You've got the arts, you've got the engineering, you've got the math, the writing, all of that. I told Tisha before I got on here I was an educator and I could talk. So she'd have to step in and say, "Hey, SeTara, I got a question." So, yeah, that's pretty much how I got started and going on 3 years doing it here in my home. I actually have two systems. Um, You'll see one behind me. I do have one that is at a food pantry here in my local area. They prepare foods for people who live in underserved communities. They do also different types of dinners. They do luncheons, but for the most part, they prepare meals that most people wouldn't get. So they receive food from restaurants, from markets, from stores that may be left over. So what I challenged them to was, okay, so I know that you have a community garden that grows outside, but what happens when you can't grow outside? So that led to the conversation of how can I complement what you're doing with an aeroponic system? And they wanted to see how it grew. So I did lend out one of my towers to them, and she's now at the food pantry and she's growing there with them. So that was very exciting to know that I'm able to take one of my garden systems and put it in a place that is out there trying to feed people nutritious, nutrient rich, nutrient dense, whichever you're calling it, foods, because many of the underserved populations, they don't get that. And we know that there's food deserts, food apartheid, food gaps, nutritional gaps. So this is one way of supporting them. This one is going to be making her grand appearance at a child care center in about another week. I'm going to have the opportunity to share with the families of the students who are there. The director reached out to me. We are working together to share the benefits of how it's going to help their children with their social emotional wellness, their academic wellness, and just interacting with each other. And like Tisha said, learning that your food does not come from a can. Learn that your food it grows somewhere before it gets to the grocery store. So, Tisha, that's a little bit about what I'm doing right now. What questions you have for me, or those who watching? What questions do you have?
Well, let's go backwards a little bit. Let's
Uh-huh.
ask and explain what is aeroponic growing versus hydroponic growing, because a lot of people get them confused. I know I was at Rainbow Gardens and the lady kept saying, "Yeah, it's the same thing," and I'm like, "It's not." So how about you give them a little lesson on what aeroponic growing is?
Awesome. So, I'm going to give them a big lesson because a lot of people get it confused with hydroponics, aquaponics. We have aeroponic growing. So let me tell you what aquaponic is first. Aquaponics is actually a mixture of like marine, like fish, and plants growing in the same environment, right? But for those who don't know much about aquaponics, that can be very tricky because you have to understand the water, the bacteria that grows in it, how to make those two things work well together. So, aquaponics, we are not. Hydroponics. Hydroponics is actually when the actual plant, the roots, sit down in the water a majority of the time. They're sitting in the water really like full time. Okay. When you think about aeroponics, air, aeroponics, water working. So it's working with the air and the water. So in our systems that we use, the plants and the roots are actually suspended in air. And then the water has a pump that cycles up and flows down over the roots. So that's where you get the aeroponics because now they're able to get the air, the oxygen that's needed, and the water that's needed from the growing system. So that is how it's completely different. I know it sounds the same because it has ponics at the end, but it's not the same at all. And you don't have to oversaturate your roots of your veggies by keeping them sitting in the water all the time, like full time, like in hydroponics. So that's the difference.
Yeah, and what I like about because I have one tower right now, What I like about our design compared to other people's design is that there's space for the roots to grow. I know you've seen some of the other ones where they're kind of like flat or they're like singular, like sit like this. I don't like those because, guys, I don't grow, but I understand roots will choke each other if they're too close to each other.
Mhm.
And I like the fact that it gives the roots the ability to grow down, have that air, and they don't get caught up and tangled. And I've seen some where they look a little too space age for me, where they're like little pods where you can't even like see the roots or anything. It's like I don't know what they're doing. And I think that when you're growing, especially when you're a new grower, you want something that's really simple, really easy, that you're not going to mess up too much in the beginning.
Mhm.
So when you first got started in growing, what are some things that you had to learn as you started growing inside your aeroponic gardening system?
Wow. The first thing I had to understand was, how is this going to grow without soil? How is it going to grow without soil? So that was very interesting for me to learn about rock wool, because I had no idea what rock wool was. Rock wool is actually like a volcanic rock. That is, think about cotton candy. When you spin it, spin it, spin it, and then you can mush it together. So that's kind of how you do the rock wool, right? So I had to learn about that and learn about how to plant my seeds in there, and just knowing the different things about the alkalinity of my water. When my granny was growing, she just planted outside and let the rain and the sunshine do what it does,
They made it
right?
look easy, didn't they?
Made it look real easy. I'm like, okay, tomatoes taste good. I'm not testing pH and all that. So I had to learn how to test the pH, which anybody who has ever grown in in an environment outside of from being outside, you want to make sure that the water has a certain pH balance for your plants to grow, which it was very easy. When I tell you, it's like plug and play, have fun, you're learning, you're teaching yourself. If you have children, you're teaching your children. But for me, that was something I had to learn, like, hmm, if it's too high, I got to lower it. If it's too low, I got to raise it. But once I did it the first time, it was like, okay, I got this. How much water I need to put in here? How much food grade minerals, nutrients? Because I quickly learned we don't use herbicides and pesticides. So literally, I could nibble off my tower, put it in my mouth, and eat it without worrying about it, right? So those were some of the things I had to learn. I also had to unlearn about traditional gardening. You don't have
Hmm.
to have herbicides and pesticides to grow. You don't have to have dirt to grow indoors all year long. Yeah, so that was some of the things I needed to learn when I first got started.
So what was okay, I don't know how to word this right, but of all the things you have grown, what was your favorite thing to grow all the time? And what was something you grew that you was shocked that actually grew, that you was nervous about growing?
Okay, so the favorite thing that I have grown was my collard greens. I grew some southern Georgia collard greens. Hear that southern come out of me? When I tell you, they were so big. Now, my husband has a large head. That one leaf was so big that I could cut it. I sauteed it with some bacon and garlic. Then I made wraps out of it. So that was my favorite thing to grow. Most people say lettuces. My favorite thing that I've grown was those southern Georgia collard greens, because I was like, they're not going to grow, number one. But when they did, they tasted so good. The one thing I was skeptical about was being able to grow peppers, sweet peppers, because many people who know, you have to pollinate them, right? I was like, I'm not outside. I don't have the bees and all that stuff happening. They grow little flowers first. And I kept thinking, how am I going to pollinate these? Well, I will tell you, some people take Q-tips and they pollinate the little flowers. I didn't do any of that. I did not do any of that. I put a little oscillating fan on the floor, turned it on low, and it just blew. So it mimics the wind blowing. So you have that pollination going. Or sometimes I just go over and shake the tower just a little bit.
Yeah.
And when I tell you, I had red peppers, orange peppers, green peppers, yellow peppers, and I didn't think it was going to grow. I was very skeptical. Yes, I see Lorenzo talk them Southern Georgia collard greens. Yes, delicious, delicious. Got to taste them off of a tower though. You're doing
Yeah,
something
it's
different.
it's definitely different because I grew collard greens thinking, oh, they're just gonna be a little bit, it'll be real cute to grow these. And then they grew so big, I had to go back and say, wait, what am I growing? Like my collard greens is about like that big.
Yes.
They were huge. And they were, what I liked about it is the fact that I could take one collard green and that was my meal for the day or two
Mm-hmm.
because it was so big. And my sister loved it because she would come and visit and I would have not just collard greens, but I have the fresh kale. I'm a kale grower. I got 3 or 4 different types of kale growing right now to get ready for the fall because it will sit through Thanksgiving and we'll just keep eating it. I love the idea of growing the fresh greens, the collard greens, the broccolini, the different types of kale. I like growing. I have peppers. I have 3 types of peppers right now. I got bell peppers, poblano peppers, and I forgot the third pepper because the sign flew off. Because mine is outside, so the wind got to it, and I don't know where it is. But we're gonna find out when it comes in. It might be the salsa blend, so I really don't know what I'm gonna get till they start flowering. But I like growing peppers and herbs and greens. I grow salads when I'm in the mood, but let's talk about them salads because some of you are
Ooh.
gonna love growing the salads. Let me tell you about my salad I grew. I don't know what it was I grew because I grew like 7 at one time. And I put it in the refrigerator in my little plastic container with some water in it, right? A little bit of water on it for when I cleaned it
Mm-hmm.
and rinsed it. I forgot it was in there for 6 weeks because I was steadily pulling off the tower itself. So I forgot it was in the crisper drawer. I said, what is this? I said, oh, do you know that salad was perfect? There was nothing
Mm-hmm.
wrong with it. Wasn't wilted. It was still crunchy. It had a smidget of brown on it. That was it. And it
Yeah.
was still good to go.
Yes.
And
That
I've
that
never been able to do that.
that's a point right there. Because when you go buy a bag of salad out of a store and you bring it home, if you don't eat it within 3 days, it's done. It is done. And when you get it, it already looks washed out.
And
The
wilted.
green is not
Yeah.
there. It's wilted. It doesn't have that dark, rich green to it. But when you say it, I was like, yes, because we would keep our lettuce. I grew Bibb lettuce, I grew gourmet lettuce, and it stayed fresh. It stayed fresh. It was crisp. Just like you said, you start picking it and you eat it, you forget you already got a bag in there. I love that. I even juiced my greens. But when I and I'm not I don't want to gross anybody out, but if you ever eat fresh greens off one of these systems, you eat it, your tongue is green. But if you go and you buy it out of a store and you eat it, your tongue is not as green because you're not getting that rich, dark chlorophyll that you would normally get when you first grow it. When you are harvesting from outside and it's traveling thousands of miles to get to you, they're spraying it, right? They're spraying it because they have to try to keep it fresh, maintain the color and all that. So by the time it gets to you, it's so washed down and washed out, you're not getting all the nutrients. It's not that
Yeah.
fresh, crisp taste. And so, Tisha, I will tell you, I'm a salad snob. When I go to restaurants, like, that's not Tower Garden. That's not aeroponic. That didn't come from aeroponic system at all. That's traveled thousands of miles to get to me. So you begin to taste the difference for sure. And it changes your palate, right? And I'm not a person
Yeah.
who likes veggies. And I don't grow everything because I don't like everything. I don't like the taste of all things that are green at all. So that's a whole nother story. But I do get my
Hey,
greens
look,
in other ways.
it's okay because for a long time I wouldn't eat or drink anything green because I just thought that was just wrong. Like green smoothies, green jelly, like if it wasn't like an actual food on my plate,
Uh-huh.
like green beans, that was cool. But if you tried to give me like green colored, I wasn't gonna do it. Took a long time for I
Mm-hmm.
to have a green smoothie. But
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about the food aspect. So, for those of you that don't know, I used to work at Whole Foods, and I worked in the produce department. That's where I started. And I would see how the organic food would come in, the conventional food would come in. And even though I will give it to Whole Foods, back then they were doing a lot of locally grown, there's still certain things that you can't get locally because guess
Right.
what? It's out of season.
Mm-hmm.
So when they actually do pluck stuff from the gardens, even when it is locally, maybe a couple of 100 miles, they're not plucking it at its ripeness because even if they plucked it on a Monday, we may not get it till Friday. It's already dying. Can't control that. And what happens is it still has to go through a processing plant. So when they pluck the greens, the lettuce, the basils, and all that kind of stuff, it goes to a processing plant for it to be cleaned, sprayed, and everything. Now, don't get me wrong, not every produce out there. I don't want you to think that every produce in the produce department is sprayed with pesticides or whatever, but it is processed in a way to maintain it. That's why you see the greens, how they get sprayed like every 5 to 10 minutes. They do that to keep it moist and try to keep it, fluffed a little bit. But sometimes what happens is things come to us and we have a very limited shelf life. the fresh strawberries, the berries, they die very quickly because they've been out for so long. So
Mhm.
one of the things that happened was there was a lot of food waste. We were throwing away a lot of lettuces and tomatoes and fresh berries and fruits, but by growing it at home, there's literally no food waste because you only pluck what you want and what you need at the time that you
Mhm.
want and you need
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
So that's why
Yeah.
I got into it because I like herbs and I like cooking with fresh herbs. And that was like my biggest thing when I first got started. Right now I have two different types of basils growing on my tower garden. I think I have three rainbow chards growing at the moment. Chard, mixed greens, kale, a couple of kales, a lot of cilantro. My lavender has been kicking it for about 8 months. I have sage that's been kicking it for a year.
Mm.
I just took some of it off and I made a sage and hot pepper butter with plant butter.
Oh, that sounds delicious. Wow. Tisha, you
Yeah.
said something. You said something about our foods when they get to the store and they arrive to the store and the shelf life. Our foods are literally sometimes they're dying as they're sitting there.
Hmm.
So you have dying foods, but we need foods that are living to supply our body with what it needs. So when you're plucking and eating as you're growing it, you're getting living food and it's continuing to live as it's growing, live as it's
Yes.
growing, and it's still being nurtured by the water, by the nutrients that you're feeding it. So it's not dying. So you're going to be getting all that you need from it, which is something that most of us we don't get, and that's just the reality of it. Um, if I can dive into this just a little bit, something that I'm doing here, and I'm also working with other people, not just in my local area, but in other places, is the fact that some of our children live in food deserts. Some of our children attend schools that are considered being placed in food deserts, right? Communities that have food deserts, so they don't have access to food. I was on this webinar, and a young lady, she said the food source that they have was a dollar store. I was like, a dollar store? She's like, yeah, they consider that a food source because if it has food in it in any kind of way, that's considered a
I
food
see that
source.
a lot. I see that a
Yes,
lot. A lot of
yes.
people who have lower income, they'll go shopping at dollar store and
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, I do get my beef patty from there because the only
Oh,
place I can get it.
okay.
But when I think about it, I want to clarify the whole thing with the food justice because I think a lot of people when they hear that they think, oh, this person lives in an isolated area,
Yeah.
bad weather. No, you can live in a city and be in a food desert if you're living in a place that doesn't get adequate amount of nutritional food. My
Yes.
mom, I wouldn't say my mom lives in a food desert, but going into her grocery store, it's over processed. Her everything else
Yeah.
is more processed foods than it is fresh vegetables. And even
Mhm.
those things
Mhm.
that you see there, I'd be like, yeah, we're not getting that. Nope, we're not. Like my mom
No.
literally will have to travel way further out of her neighborhood to get
Yep.
fresh quality vegetables and tomatoes and lettuce because where it is locally, even though she has three supermarkets in her neighborhood that she
Mhm.
could walk to,
Mhm.
they all don't have the freshest quality. She literally picks and chooses which store she's going to go to
Yeah.
buy the vegetables.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's something that I've started working with. I've started working with some organizations here in my local area. We're looking at places because I mean, think about it. If you look around or you drive around your city, you're going to see vacant buildings. You're going to see overgrown lots, it's just grass and things grown, houses that are empty, stores that are no longer in business, right? So something that I've been talking to some of the community organizations here about is let's look at these empty homes. Let's look at these vacant lots. I want you to imagine with me. I want you to envision creating food sources there. So we're working on a project. I'll just tell you, working on a project of putting in those aeroponic garden systems, not only creating a food source, but creating a job source. So that's something a lot of people don't see is that it's not just about growing food, it's about how can you use this to also create job opportunities for people. Because there's people out there who love all things food, all things gardening, and it's a way to create job sources. So I'm working with some organizations on creating job sources, creating food opportunities, and really instead of putting up another skyscraper in our area, and if you put up one, Let's make it a flat rooftop and let's put some aeroponic systems on top of it. Let's
Yeah.
feed our communities. That's happening. That's happening. It's especially in a lot of the larger cities already. So I'm excited about that part. Yeah, it's when I look at the garden system in some of the schools, because I put them in childcare centers, they are in schools, and like I said, in the food pantry. When I look at them sitting there, and I imagine the children being around them, I'm gonna tell you what I see. I see little scientists. I see little farmers. I see little gardeners. I see little chefs. Those I see educators. That's what I see in the children when they're interacting with it. I'm like, wow. But I don't leave out the homeschool mama, because there are some homeschool mamas that are doing their thing with these gardens. They're like, yes, I can feed my family and it's a lesson for my children, which I love being able to hand off a starter lesson plan with these. Home-based childcare providers are overlooked sometimes, Tisha, and I work with home-based childcare providers. And some of them are saying, I would love to have a garden, but I don't have the land for that. And what if I decide
Yeah.
to move? What if I decide to move? I can't
That's
take my
something that
garden
I
with
get
me.
though. I guess what I
Yeah.
get, people say, someone told me that they would look into it, but they have an apartment. I said, so do I. Having an apartment doesn't really stop you. I will admit, if your apartment is tiny, that may be an issue. But having an apartment is not a
Yeah.
stoppage, because you can grow indoors and you can grow outdoors.
Hmm.
And as long as you have somewhere to put, we have somebody who grew a full bounty living in a basement with no natural light, and their
Yes.
tower was amazing. But we got a question here, and I'm gonna
Hmm.
let you answer that because I know you love that question.
I love it. I love it. Oh my goodness, look at that. It says, OMG, I need this tower garden. How do I get 1 to 3? Wow. Well, let me just tell you, if you're watching on Tisha's timeline, connect with Tisha. I know she says she's a non-aeroponic gardenista, but guess what? She's been growing. She's growing amazing. Reach out to her. If you're on my timeline, reach out to me. It's easy. I mean, it's easy. And a lot of people say, I can't afford it. Okay, let me stop you right there. You're saying you can't afford it. We make this easy. We make this easy. I'm going to date myself here. Some people may say, I don't know how that means. Monthly installments, a layaway plan. Have you ever been to a store where you purchase a bunch of things for Christmas for your children, but you don't pay for all at once? You pay for it on monthly installments. Okay, this system I have right back here, it's about $1,200, right? I paid it off. I'm gonna tell you right now, I was on a teacher's salary. I paid it off in 12 months increments. Every month I made a payment, paid it off. I looked at my husband, I said, can I get another? He's like, yeah, I'm 2 payments away from that. It's that easy. If you have a family, if you have family members who are saying, I want one, but I can't afford it, come on now. The same way y'all go in together and do a family reunion and everybody brings something, make this your family reunion project. Everybody tips in, and you grow together because it's gonna produce so much bounty. So do it with your family, do it with your friends. There are ways to do it. You just have to stop saying what you can't afford, because I guarantee you, if the doctor told you, which most of them
Hmm.
tell you need to eat more fruits and veggies, you're gonna do whatever you need to do to eat more fruits and veggies, right?
And it's
I
easy to do it
Yeah,
this way when it's growing in your house
yes.
versus going out to dinner and trying to figure out, do I want mashed potatoes or do I want a salad? They're gonna get
Mm-hmm.
that loaded mashed potatoes because that's just where our brain is. But I agree. I got mines and I did an installment plan, and give me about another month or so. I'm about to have another one. I already had somebody told me, they was like, why don't you have two? I said, because I gotta pay this one off. Now understand, once it's paid off, you get to keep everything.
Yeah.
It's not a return process. It's not a layaway, like you got to give it back, but you get to keep it. Now, when you get your seeds and things like that, one of the things that you have to understand is that you can get seeds from anywhere. And yes, this will save you money, and it would actually spark creativity. Some of the things that I've seen, at least in myself, is it gives me something to focus on when I'm overwhelmed, when my anxiety is too
Mm.
high, or my brain is running like 90 miles per hour, and my body wants to go 12. It gives me something to look at, something to play with, and it gets my creative juices going. Because I'm gonna tell you, last night, instead of going to
Mhm.
sleep, I was looking at, you're gonna love this. I was looking at the little germination cases on Amazon, right? Because I have the one by Burpee, which I absolutely love. But now I saw the ones with the cover that you can turn
Mm-hmm.
it into a greenhouse with the light connected. So in my head, I've already bought a stand and I'm about to get four of these things and I'm about to set this up. And I'm actually going to start just growing seedlings. So as people purchase gardens, I could just give them the seedlings to go ahead and get started. And I can start playing around with different things and, let it grow before it goes in.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually, even though I'm calling myself the non-gardenista, I do a lot, growing a lot. I've used it I am a cook, a chefish. I'm a home chef. I cook a lot with it. I make a lot of different butters and oils. I just did one today, and let's just say it was yummy. I took avocado oil, and then I used some dried sage from my garden, and then some other dried herbs, and then I just put it all together, and then infused this oil, and it just made the food pop, right?
Mm-hmm.
But somebody wants to know what can be grown on the towers. Let's talk about the fact that there are two towers.
Yes. Yes. So on the outside tower, which Tisha has in a tower that she grows mostly outdoors, the outside tower has a larger base, a larger bottom to it. So those are more like your fruits or your squashes, your zucchinis. And yes, you can grow watermelons on there as well. So your melons, your cucumbers, your zucchinis, your squash, the heavier fruits that you can grow on there, the heavier vegetables you can grow on there, which sits flat on the bottom, flat on the base. So that's your outside one, right? The one that I have, I'm going to tilt this just a little bit so you can see the bottom. So the one that I have does not have like the larger bottom. That one is more of a 13-gallon tank. And I grow a lot of the leafy greens. I do more of the salad mixes, the juicing types of things like that. You can put a support cage on it and grow. Now, let me tell you, you can grow everything on there except for root veggies. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to be hard to grow a root veggie on there just because the nature of how the roots will grow. So I will tell you that, but you can grow just about everything on there: beans, tomatoes, spinach, squash, strawberries, melons. Oh my goodness, basils, kales. There's
All types
so
of
many different
herbs
things.
work.
All yes, all types of
All types of
herbs.
herbs. I have grown basil, cilantro.
Yes,
I've grown
thyme.
several types of basil: Thai basil, red basil. I have a purple Ruffles basil, a red basil, green basil, arugula. I have someone who is about to grow sesame leaves, like Asian sesame leaves that she
Yes.
found at a Thai restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
So you can really grow just about anything that's not a root vegetable, a bush, or a tree.
Yes. Yes.
So no apples, people,
Yes.
no avocados.
No apples, no avocados. We're sorry about that. Tisha, I
Sorry
want
about
to
that.
hop onto something that you said earlier, and it's something that a lot of people don't want to touch on. Our mental well-being, mental wellness is is at an all-time high, right? And you mentioned that how calming it is. That is something that I do. Some days I would come down in the mornings because I have the lights set on. It's on a timer, so they would come on at like 5 o'clock in the morning, and I would come down and I would sit with all the lights out here, and I would just meditate because the flowing of the water was just so calming for me. So when I was having those moments of, and I am a person who has suffered from anxiety. When I have those anxious moments, listening to the water calmed me down. And the other thing, there was a young lady. She has one at her child care center. She talked about a little guy in her classroom, and she told me, she said, he's a student with autism. He's a child who has autism. She said, I noticed that certain things would have him so antsy. She said, but the minute the water would come on, she could see his body calm down. And what she did was she would leave some of the ports open because you don't have to fill them all up. She left a
Mm-mm.
few open. And when he was having those moments, she would wash his little hands and she would let him stick his fingers in the water and let the water flow over his fingers. And that was calming for him. So I tell people, it's just not a food source, it's a wellness source. It's for our health. And it's called horticultural therapy, is what it is. And she uses it for those different purposes in her classroom. And I thought, even though I'm an educator, I never would have thought of that part of it. But she mentioned that. She said, I noticed that it calms the room. At nap time, it calms the room. So imagine what it does for the body on the outside, just as much as what it does on the body on the inside. So Tisha, I'm glad that you shared that because a lot of people don't touch on that. And our food controls our mood. it affects our brain, it affects our bodies. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I like my mom has come and visited, and she said that once she got used to the water flowing, it became relaxing. Because my garden right now, it's an indoor outdoor, so I have it indoors right now because it's super hot. It's just way too hot.
Hmm.
So I wanted to give the food a break with the heat and
Yeah.
everything. But I love mine just because I just get curious and see what I can grow. Like I literally have stuff on there that I was growing and I don't know what it is. So when it matures, I'm gonna eat it and figure it out. I have a lot of chard, peppers, lettuce. I still have some lettuces growing. I have one. I have like you ever grow something and you're looking at it and you're like, I don't remember planting that.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
I have lettuce right now that I've never seen and I'm just it's just there. And I'm like, okay, we're gonna try this soon. But I find that one of the things that I want people to understand is that growing your own herbs and different things. It's not for just for the schools and the centers but chefs, culinary schools. You can do this, like she said, with the reunion. This could be a community thing. Your community can get together to set
Hmm.
up some hydroponic growing in your what is the not the lobby, but the place where people go to hang out. I always forget what it's
The
called.
community centers, the fellowship hall in the
Yeah,
churches. Yeah.
inside of the home where you live, you can set those up and have a community based thing where people can go down there and grow different things. People have them in fitness centers. We have somebody who has it at their yoga center. And it's something I think people really should invest in because people will say, like you spoke about earlier, oh, this is too expensive. But think about how much money you're wasting when you're
Yes.
throwing away half-used fruits and vegetables. I have
Hmm.
peppers that have been in my refrigerator. They're like hot peppers, but they've been in my refrigerator for 2 months. There's not a sign of mold on them. All they're doing is slowly drying out inside of my refrigerator. And I actually used one of them to infuse 2 sets of oil. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? So you really won't waste it because, guys, I bring food to my hairstylist. She loves when I come to see her because I bring her food. I think the last time I saw her, I brought her a big, like, gallon bag full of fresh lettuce off of the tower. So I bring her fresh fruits. Well, not fruits yet. I'm still scared to grow fruits yet. But the vegetables, the leaves, I bring that to her. And she's
Hmm.
very appreciative of it because it gives her kids something fresh to eat and to snack on versus, all the other things. Because she works at a salon and during the summertime, the kids are sitting there all day. It's just
Hmm.
something to look forward to when she sees me. And
Yeah.
this is something that you can be doing with elderly neighbors. I know, like my mom, she's a baker, and what she does is she bakes and gives it away to her neighbors. What if you did the same thing with the vegetables that you're growing to the senior citizens or the people who
Hmm.
can't get out,
Yeah.
immobilized people? If you was to bring them a basket of fresh lettuce, peppers, and I'm telling you, when those peppers start, they don't stop.
No,
I
they
found
just
one
keep
pepper.
going.
I looked and it was hidden because I have half the cage up. And I looked behind the leaf. I said, "Oh, look, it's another pepper. I didn't see that one growing." I said, "Let me trim this a little bit so it gets some light." You know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. You mentioned with our elderly population, some of them are in assisted living facilities or just a regular nursing home. They don't have the mobility. What I love is that it's accessible to everybody. If there's a child or a person that's in a wheelchair, you can literally roll the garden system to them,
Mm-hmm.
and they can actually get close enough to it versus if you're outside. And let me say again, there is nothing wrong with growing outside, nothing at all. But sometimes you have limited access for people who may have mobility issues and they're not able to get out there. So it's just one more way to bring the garden into someone, to give them that same access that they would love to have. And it just does something for the mind, it does something for the body to be able to access it. So I am
Yeah.
just, this is exciting for me. I
Yeah. And
love
then
it
I
and
want you
can't
to
wait to get the
understand,
third one.
just because somebody has disabilities, body aches, and different things like that, because I know one of the concerns is, I have back problems, this problem, that problem. How do I fill it up? Guys, let me tell you some tricks. So, first of all, if you can roll it, it comes with a long tube that you can
Yes.
use to pump the water out. You
Mm-hmm.
can use that same tube to pump the water in. Because we figured that out helping my friend Sarah with her first one. I said, well, we're just going to do this and we're just going to hold this. And we stood there. Now, when I refill it, now I have back issues and sometimes my knee bothers me. So I can't, and then I'm just clumsy. So I can't always get the water to go into the hole properly. Guys, my lights is not on. So when it's time to fill it up, I pop the top off and I just pour the water straight on top.
Mhm.
It don't make
Mhm.
no difference. They just get a little bit extra water, about 30 minutes,
Yep.
because it's a couple of passes. But I just do that. Or you can keep a port open and then just pour the water directly into the port. That way you're not bending down and,
Yes.
making a mess and spilling it. It's very simple. It's very easy. And then you get great support. So when you do get your tower,
Mhm.
you will be added to at least 2 or 3 different groups that's all about tower gardening and growing your garden and what can I grow, what shouldn't I grow, or how do I do this, and all the different things that come along with this. So you'll get great
Mhm.
support and you won't be growing by yourself. So
Yes.
as we wrap this up, because I know Mr. Tara has some things to do, what are some things you would tell people who are on the edge of getting their first tower garden?
One, just do it. Do it. But what I will say is reach out to Tisha, reach out to me, and just ask those questions. I tell people make an informed, educated decision. Ask your questions, learn more about it. We're happy to share that with you. But the biggest thing is to do it, right? It's food. We all need food. Just do it, but ask your questions. We're here to answer those questions for you. That is the biggest thing. Do it. I absolutely do not regret not one single moment of the decision we made to get the two we have, and I'm ready to get the third one. So I'm ready. I'm excited. What would you say, Tisha? What would you say to him?
I would basically tell people that it just makes sense. If you are a foodie, if you like to eat, if you have a large family, these are things that you can be growing to help subsidize going to the supermarket. And for me, if you're a picky eater like I can be, the ability to grow what you like when you like it
Yeah.
is so much better. Because I got tired of going to the supermarket and my choice was romaine, spring, and spinach.
Mm-hmm.
That is like the mass majority of what you're going
Yeah.
to get. You know what I mean? I like having the options of growing with whatever lettuce you want. And I think that for a family who is trying to eat healthier, this is a great way. You know what I mean? Because eating
Yeah.
healthy doesn't mean eating lettuce. It just means eating higher quality food. So even if you're just growing your own herbs and
Mm-hmm.
have a garden of herbs and you send me pictures of that beautifulness, just imagine the higher quality, the better taste. My mom tasted a basil leaf one time and she said, "What is this?" I said, "It's basil." She goes, "This is basil?" I said, "This is real basil, not store
Mm-hmm.
basil. It's different."
Mm-hmm. It's different.
The taste is
It's
different,
different.
the quality is different, and it's a great investment to have inside of your household because, again, this may not just benefit you. This could benefit your neighbors, your friends, your family. Get together as a family and come in to purchase the tower. So it's not just you. And then, of course, make them come and help harvest and learn and buy some
Yeah.
seeds and have some seed parties and stuff like that. But I just think it's a great investment that a lot of people should really get more involved in, especially with
Mm-hmm.
the fact that we live in certain areas where it get cold and you can't grow.
Yeah.
When the
Yeah.
frost hits the ground, we can't grow in the ground anymore. There's very few items that can grow in the frost. Very
Mm-hmm.
few.
Mm-hmm.
This allows you to grow year round. So when it's like 14 degrees in Texas at night for some strange reason, my plants are fine on the inside, still blooming and growing.
Yeah. That's it. See it as an investment. See it as an investment and not an expense. It's a mindset shift. So when you start seeing things as an investment and you see the return on that investment, you'll begin it'll begin to make sense to you. So look at it as an investment in your family's wellness for sure. So
Mhm.
I love that you said that, Tisha. Look at this as an investment and not as an expense. It's
Yes.
part of your groceries. You're going to eat, it becomes a part of your grocery bill. That's it. You were going to go buy lettuce, veggies, whatever. You're going to buy it in the store. Now you're going to grow it at home.
Yep.
It's an investment.
Yep.
Yeah,
And the arugula is amazing. It's
it is.
very different.
It is
You can
delicious.
smell the spiciness.
Mm-hmm. And taste it.
Yes. All right, guys. We have been on long enough. It is now time for us to say goodbye to all of our gardenistas out there and garden. I don't know how you say what you would call a male gardener. I wonder if there's a term for male gardeners.
Hmm. We'll just call him a gardener
Gardener.
because you
Yeah.
feel
But
that.
guys, this is something anybody can do. I honestly didn't know how to grow anything, and now I'm trying to grow everything, and I'm trying to experiment. I know SeTara's over there with some ideas and some seeds she has on the side that she hasn't told nobody about. Oh, I love it. Look at this. Look
Go-
at
I love it. Garden Mista.
I like that. I like
I
that. So
like
that's what
it.
we'll
I
call your
like it.
Gardenista. But
I love it.
yeah, just keep an eye on us because I'm sure we're both going to be growing some different things.
Hmm.
And I know for us in the San Antonio area, probably the end of August, early September, we're going to have another seed swap party where we're going to have seeds and seedlings to swap out with other people who are growing and to do a whole nother presentation to show them the power of growing. And by then, my kale will be in. So I'll be making some fresh kale salad right off the garden with
Hmm.
my chef friend. You
Yes.
know,
Love
I
it.
can't
Love
wait for
it.
my kale to get big.
Definitely stay tuned. I'm going to be working on some things here in the Nashville, Tennessee area to do some salad in a jar parties. If you never heard of it, stay tuned because we're going to be doing a little bit of that too. So, Miss Tisha, thank you for sharing this space with me. And even though she says she's a non-gardenista, she's a gardenista, y'all. She doesn't want to claim it, but she is. She
No, I want to make it easy for people who feel the same way. Like you can do this too.
is. You can do
All
it.
right,
Thank
guys,
you,
thank
guys.
you. If you have any questions, just comment below in the thread that you've seen. Hit us up directly and let us help you get on this journey to growing your own fresh vegetables and herbs and everything in between.
Yes.
All right.